Hi, it's Susan Nicely, and welcome to today's episode of I Travel Nurse TV. Nice to see ya. Hospital review, Samuel Simmonds Memorial Hospital in Barrow, Alaska on assignment. I worked there through a company called Meridian Medical Staffing back at the end of summer of 2013. And boy, I gotta tell you, it was an interesting experience. Now, generally speaking, I love going to Alaska and I love taking care of the native population. But one thing you're going to learn very quickly if you go to Alaska, no matter how beautiful it is that sometimes outsiders aren't always welcome. Well, at this hospital, it was very interesting. You know, usually how this works, and this is what I experienced when I worked down in Bethel, is that, my travel company, Meridian Medical Staffing, flew me up to Barrow, Alaska, and usually there's somebody at the airport from the hospital there to pick you up and show you where you're going to be living. And why is that? That's because in these rural parts of Alaska, there's no place for a travel company to get their own housing, such as an extended stay hotel or to even rent places. Housing is very, very limited. So the hospitals themselves will either have housing complexes or they have leased apartments from people that live in the town or the village. So this is already set up for you. So I knew right when I got to Barrow, Alaska, nobody was meeting me at the airport. That was a problem. And then I also had problems getting a hold of somebody at the hospital to come there and give me directions so I can move forward. So that was sort of strike number one in Barrow, Alaska. Strike number two is that my first day of work, boy, I gotta tell you, this nurse Kenny, who is a travel nurse, he hit it right on the spot. They don't like you because you're cute. I'm like, okay, you know what? I don't think that I'm cute. I mean, I'm okay. I try to keep myself up. I'm not some, supermodel, drop dead, gorgeous knockout, something like that. But, I do you do what you can with what you work with. I try to put on makeup and have myself, look good and smell good or whatever. Well, Kenny hit that. He's like, they don't like you because you look too good and you smell too good. Oh boy, right away, one of the nurses there, Marianne, she was one of those sane nurses and does some kind of compliance thing. She actually made me go home because my perfume was apparently offensive or some kind of crap like that. And I actually had volunteered. I'm like, do you want me just to go home and take a shower and come back? She was giving me such a hard time. She actually interrupted me on my lunch break and wanted me to do that. So I just knew everything was downhill from there. And I'll tell you, every woman has the right to look, dress however they want to, whether that's conservative, no makeup, living the rugged wildlife, or whether that's to the total extreme glamour chick girl, anything in between. But I will tell you, a lot of these women that live in Alaska, including these women at the hospital, they do not seem to like female nurses that come in and perhaps maybe are somewhat are attractive or wear makeup or because apparently, like I said, Kenny hit this right on the spot. Apparently we might be a threat, some kind of a threat. I'm not sure, their boyfriend, husband, or whomever. There's definitely a jealousy factor when it comes to women in Alaska, welcoming outside nurses, especially if they're kind of cute. So I ran into a series of retaliation at the hospital from that standpoint. But now back to the clinical side of it, they actually have a small clinic. They have about a 6-bed clinic, and that serves the people in the village that come in. And if you don't know anything about the healthcare system in Alaska, it's actually all paid for by a treaty that the tribes of Alaska have with our United States government. So their healthcare is free. So six of these beds are clinic beds, licensed clinic beds, and then 2 beds are considered emergency room beds. Now, this is a critical access hospital, keep in mind, in rural Barrow, Alaska. So this is what you have to work with. And so usually if you work there, and even if you're designated as an ER nurse, just keep in mind there's only 2 beds. You may not have an ER patient, so you go into the clinic and help. And actually, it's a lot of fun. I really enjoy taking care of the native people in Alaska. My problem has always been the white people. But anyway, moving forward, they also have a triage area where you triage all of everybody coming in. And then the hospital has a wing for med-surg, and they take care of very, very low acuity med-surg patients, and then fly them out up to Anchorage if deemed that they need to be admitted with something that would be more than what they can handle, like multiple antibiotics, or, there's just a multiple amount of problems going on, or they need consults, because there's not the consults there at that hospital. They do have a couple L&D rooms, but usually anybody that has emergent kind of childbirth or any complications with childbirth does have to be flown out to Anchorage. So that is interesting from that standpoint. That's one thing I love about rural Alaska. But then also the hospital there feeds you. They feed you 3 meals a day. Now, if you are lucky enough to live in hospital-provided housing that's actually on campus, it's real easy for you to just really walk across the street and go get your 3 meals of the day. If you do not live on campus and you live a couple miles out, like I did not live on campus, I lived a couple miles out, you'd have to take a taxi in to get your free 3 meals a day. I did that, sometimes, but you know what? It was just more of a hassle to actually do that. Now, the hospital does provide taxi vouchers for you, so you get like these $5 little money taxi vouchers to get back and forth to the hospital every day. So that is nice. Now, in hospital provided housing, now keep in mind they have full control over you, because the hospital is owning these places or renting these places. And so the thing about it is, keep in mind the hospital knows where you live. So your manager may call you at home or may come knocking at your door and want you to work. I mean, I actually had that happen in Bethel, Alaska too, but that happened in Barrow. And so if you're a person that enjoys the privacy on your day off, just keep in mind that the hospital knows exactly where you live. They're paying your living expenses. And so they have a tendency to make you feel like you need to be compliant with everything that they say or do, whether or not you agree with it or not. So that could be a factor. Now, I ran into a situation where I came home from work one night and there were notices on my apartment door and on the railing saying that my heat and electricity were going to be turned off like within a few days. And I'm like, oh my God. and then I had an extremely hard time getting that resolved with my manager, the manager Cindy up there. And I had a hard time getting that resolved with the city of Barrow and with the hospital staff that does housing for the contract staffing. And so, I mean, I just saw within a few days that I could actually be stuck in Barrow, Alaska, without any heat or electricity. And sadly, is that nobody in the hospital really took that seriously. I mean, that could have been a huge major issue. Why they were not jumping on that right away, why bills were not being paid, I don't know, but just keep in mind that's a risk. The Barrow police did know about that situation because I also had a guy try to bust through my door drunk one night. So crazy up there. So keep in mind, when you get into these rural communities, especially you get into Alaska, you're going to be heavily controlled by by kind of the hospital and by, the sort of the city. So you have to somewhat be in compliance with what they want. And if they don't like you, then they'll try to get rid of you. So, I mean, I've known a few nurses that have gone up to Alaska, up to not just Barrow, but other parts of Alaska, Nome, and so forth, that have had, difficulties with staff, difficulties with housing, and so forth, and then contracts ending sooner than what they should have, based on the fact that sometimes the people up there just don't like outsiders. So anyway, that's today's episode of I Travel Nurse TV, Samuel Simmonds Memorial Hospital in Barrow, Alaska. Look at that objectively. I will tell you from my perspective, I will never go back there, but you may have a different experience. So I will see you next time. Have a good one.